Welcome to r/Prorevenge, where an entitled woman gets fired from her cushy, high-paying government job. The house we live in was built at the same time as the villainous woman in the story. My parents were often at the construction site and helped if they could. The strange lady was nice to us at the beginning, but that changed soon. This happened around Christmas 2017. We have a neighbor who is very unpopular in our neighborhood. She is well known for harassing people who use the public path at the left side of her house. The path is 1 out of 3 to reach the public playground behind her house. If someone uses the path, she would scream at them that this is her path on her private property, which is wrong. Sometimes she would close the path with a red and white plastic chain and won't let anyone use the path. She would scream at kids on the playground when they were loud during the daytime. She always has her shutters almost down so she can stalk the people in the street and stay unseen. If some kid's ball landed in her garden, she would bring it to the kids and destroy it with a knife right in front of them. All kids knew this and would run by her house if they wanted to go on the playground. When the neighbors' kids were playing in the winter outside in the snow, she would call the Child Protective Services equivalent in my country and tell them that they were locked outside by their parents as a punishment. If someone walked by her house at night, she would often call the police due to a noise complaint. She was known by everyone in our neighborhood as the witch. But she hated my family in particular. We lived right beside her house. Our houses shared one wall. When me and my sister were young, we would use a swing in our garden or jump on the trampoline. She would regularly file noise complaints and often harass me and my sister when we were alone in the garden. If my parents heard her screaming swear words at us from the first floor of the house, they would yell back. If me or my sister walked on the path by her house, she would scream at us. We used the path daily on our way to school. One time when I came home from school, she was in her car with the trunk on the sidewalk. When I walked by the back of her car, she howled the engine and the dark exhaust hit me. Almost every night, she would hit the shared wall with something to wake us up. Sometimes she'd ring on our door and try to make us go to other neighbors to complain about small things. We often had lawsuits with her. One time because her trees grew 2 meters over the border. Another time because she built a fence by sticking bamboo mats in the dirt and tearing it down the next day and telling the police we destroyed her wooden fence. We won all lawsuits against her because my uncle, he's teaching law school, gave us good advice on how to deal with her and name lawyers he knew were good. She never paid the workers who repaired things at her house or the electrical and water bills. When her old car broke down, she didn't pay the car mechanic and never got her car back. She was in debt and had a mortgage on her house. When the foreclosure came, we were at the court and bought her house. She was with us in the courtroom when the auction was and tried to buy her own house, but wasn't allowed because she couldn't provide proof that she has enough money. We bought her house where she lived for 20 plus years in front of her. We bought it because my parents were at the construction of her house and knew the workers did a great job at building it. We renovated it when she left. We repainted all the rooms, renewed the insulation, and put down a new wooden floor. My grandparents will be moving into her old house this fall. I can't imagine the look on this woman's face when you bought her own house. Oh, that must have felt so good. What you should have done also is thrown a housewarming party and invite her for one last shindig. And then just spend the entire party gloating and talking about all the things you're gonna do with your new house. Our next Reddit post is from PacketOverload. Back when I was in college, my pathophysiology class had a final project worth 50% of the total grades we could earn, and groups were picked at the beginning of the semester. This was a massive project that you were expected to start working on at the beginning of the semester. And if you thought you could do it all last minute, you were probably in for a bad time. It was myself, 2 other girls who I knew worked hard, and then this one guy that the one girl was crushing on. She had to add him to our group because he was cute or something. I have no idea. I call him idiot every time I tell the story though, because he truly was an idiot. The girls were fantastic, and everyone pulled their own weight during this project. with the exception to Idiot. Idiot never once did any of the group project work. He ignored all messages through texting or Facebook, but would answer the one girl if she was flirting with him. He would only show up to class maybe twice a month, if that. He would constantly post photos of himself on vacation in Mexico or the Bahamas. I'm pretty sure he spent more time out of the country than in it. 1 week before the project is due, he messages the group asking what pages in the textbook he needs to look through to do his part of the project. We tell him what he needs to do and where to find the information. We laid everything out for him. If we did anything more, we would be better off doing his part of the project ourselves. Idiot thanks us and then disappears. We all assumed he was doing the work he needed to do, and we were prepared to take a hit on our marks because he didn't have anything done up until now, so the quality of his work was probably terrible at best. The project due date rolls around and he's nowhere to be found and is ignoring all of our desperate messages. We, myself and the 2 girls, go to the professor and tell her everything that happened, along with the screenshots of the literal months worth of conversations where we constantly tried to get Idiot to come to labs with us or the library where we offered to help him do his part. The professor was not amused. She immediately fired off an email to Idiot and CC'd the head of the program as well, basically saying that Idiot needs to either do his part and show up to class the next week with it, or he will receive a 0, and the rest of us won't be affected. Can you guess what happened? Idiot was a no answer and no show, with no excuses or anything. Professor gave him a fat 0. Turns out that he needed to do this project and do well in it to pass. He bombed every test, and with this failure, he was denied from passing that semester. I'm fairly certain he had to retake the course during the summer, which means he, or more likely his mom, had to shell out another $1,300 just for that class. A couple of months later in the college bookstore, Idiot and his mom, I call her Screamer, run into myself and the other girl who didn't like him. The Screamer just loses it on the girl and I, screaming at us, saying we constantly harassed her son and she was going to make it impossible for myself or the girl to find work. Idiot's mom worked in the same field that our degrees were for. She sat in the board of directors for the Public Health Alliance for that area. So she was a public figure and a supposedly well-behaved and educated one too. She was escorted out by security shortly after, but that wasn't all she had planned. Screamer ended up dragging myself and the girl through every single college meeting they could schedule regarding our non-existent negative behavior towards her son, where he claimed he was constantly harassed, yet with no proof. It was literal months of this poor girl and I having to change our schedules for school classes and studying, so we didn't have any classes or chance happenings or run-ins with this idiot, as that's what the college demanded we do. It made our last year or 2 semesters living heck because we couldn't be anywhere near Idiot, otherwise we could face interdisciplinary hearings or worse. Now for the revenge. The security company that handled the contract for the college was also the same company that handled the contract where I used to work. I was extremely close friends with the night shift supervisor, going out for drinks and playing Halo all night with him and his girlfriend sort of close. So one night after I finished work, I asked him for a favor. On the promise that I wouldn't tell a soul, he helped me. And telling him he'd have another great video to share with his friends, I asked him to let me email the video to my personal email account. After I told him what had happened and on what day and time it happened, he drove me to the campus. Just after the main building had closed, him and I walked over to a security office where they have all the recordings that run back to the day the security system was installed. He brought the video up of Idiot's mom in the college bookstore, audio and all, of her screaming at myself and my friend. He recognized Screamer. Turns out she's done this before at a different site he patrols, and that he was told he had to keep it quiet by his supervisors. I told him he could be as quiet as he wanted, but I was going to get my revenge on her. A quick email later and I was in the possession of the video. I found out who the rest of the board members were over the course of a few days, and they were all sent an email with a video of Screamer going bananas in the college bookstore, screaming at an obviously confused guy and a freaked out girl. The audio perfectly captured the moment where she threatened to make it impossible for me or the girl to find any work anywhere within the district, followed by her argument with security as she was escorted out. I never received any replies from the board members, so I just waited to see what would happen. Screamer was voted out from her position the following week after the video was shown during one of the meetings she was attending. She lost her very cushy government job and was last seen working in an old age home according to a mutual friend. I'm not sure what happened to Idiot, but I did hear from the same mutual friend that he never did graduate and works at a call center now. The girl and I ended up finding full-time work immediately after graduating. Never had an issue there. Oh, and the security guard ended up getting hired by the RCMP. So I guess good things do happen to good people. OP, if you're watching this, I will legitimately pay you hundreds of dollars for this video. I am not kidding. I would love to show this on my channel. If you still own this video, please contact me and hopefully we can work something out. And to everyone else, you definitely want to subscribe to my channel because if I manage to get my hands on this video, you are definitely going to want to be around when I post the update video. Our next Reddit post is from Into the Gyre. And fair warning, this story is pretty intense because OP recounts abuse she suffered when she was younger. I really went back and forth as to whether or not I wanted to cover this story, but ultimately I decided that I wanted to. Because in the story, OP didn't fully understand that what was happening wasn't normal and felt powerless to stop it. And on the off chance that one of my fans is suffering through something similar to this, I want you to know that you don't have to suffer through this and there are people who will help you. I encourage you to reach out to childhelp.org or rain.org. The beginning. From the beginning, Hank had been involved in my life. A family friend and a member of my parents' church. He worked in a nursery and watched over me. He always helped out with children's programs in the church and even watched over me outside of the church. Since he was a friend of my father's, it didn't seem weird when he got me gifts, took me places, or gave me a little spending money. Also, he had a son my older brother's age, Jim, that my brother was friends with. Year 1. When I was in 6th grade, I was around 10. My brother would hang out with Jim every Sunday after church, and I wanted to come too because I wanted to be like my brother. Obviously, they didn't want me around, so while they were ignoring me, I developed a friendship with Hank. Oh man, this story's making me nervous. We would play video games together in his basement for hours until my brother and I had to leave. I don't know when it exactly happened, but one day Hank was standing behind me watching me play when he ran his hands over my body. I was confused and didn't know what to do, but it didn't matter because just as quickly as it started, it was done. It was stupid, but I continued to come over and occasionally he would do it again. He started threatening me that if I told anyone, he would know and he would kill me, and that I wasn't allowed to stop coming so my parents wouldn't wonder why. Although it didn't happen often, it was picking up, but he was also taking me more places. I didn't like being with him, and I did at the same time. Year 2, around 7th grade, things picked up. Whenever I came over, he would touch me, and he would do it for longer each time. Even when he took me out and when we were at church, he would take me into bathrooms. Around this time, even though I still wasn't sure what I was feeling, I started to resist his actions. And consequently, he started the physical abuse. He would hit me with whatever was around, books, computer keyboards, etc., and punch and kicked me. Once, he stabbed me in the back with a syringe. Around this time, he started taking me to a pool. At the pool, he would touch me in the water and had me touch him in the shower and use my mouth. Year 2.5. The summer after my 7th grade year, my church went on a camping trip to a lake. My parents didn't really do that stuff, but Hank and Jim invited my brother and I to come with them. Since my brother was always with Jim, Hank had almost 24-hour access to me. During this trip, Hank was on me whenever he had the chance. Around my 8th year is when the verbal and psychological abuse started. Hank decided to take the route of constantly demeaning, degrading, and insulting me every chance he got. On top of his words, he started making me wear a leash, crawl around on all fours, and eat dog food, all while naked. He even had a collar made that said Hank's little dog. Now, this whole time, I had been dealing with mental illnesses that were only worsened by what he was doing. That year, I started really cutting, and I tried killing myself multiple times, which landed me in the psychiatric hospital twice. After coming out of the hospital for overdosing, Hank took me to a movie and explained to me that he was going to stop. He said he really cared for me and didn't want me to end up dead, and he really did. I was free, but my mind was still conflicted and I was still scared of him, so I didn't tell anyone. I slowly did my best to go to church less and less. The aftermath. That wasn't the end of my hospital trips. Even without his abuse, I was mentally unstable. I kept cutting and attempting for years. It was bringing down my education and my relationships with family and friends. Finally, when I was in 10th grade and in the hospital, I let it slip to a therapist that I had been abused, and she helped me tell my parents. Slowly, I was able to tell my parents a little of what happened and eventually who did it. The revenge. As soon as I said it was Hank, it started. First, I talked to a police officer, although I could barely say anything. Then, I was brought to an establishment designed for kids to talk about what had happened to them. I talked to a woman and told her all about the abuse. Well, the sexual abuse. I was still scared, and I couldn't bring myself to mention the physical abuse or others. The case against Hank started, and they started looking for the evidence. One day, I let it slip to my parents that other abuse happened, causing me to go back. And this time, I told them everything. They got their evidence and arrested Hank, but that didn't mean it was over. The worst of it was still coming. It was one thing to talk to one person who was trained to talk to me, but it was another to know I would have to testify at a pretrial. I had to relive my experiences sitting across from Hank, and then I had to be interrogated by his lawyer. Luckily, I was stone-faced. I was able to talk to his lawyer without breaking down. I don't really remember exactly what was said, but Hank's lawyer wasn't the best, and some of my responses to his questions made the people in the court laugh a little. After that was the real thing, a trial with 12 strangers sitting there listening to my pain. During the pretrial, I was kind of quiet and scared, but I went into that courtroom the day of the trial and confidently told everyone what the bastard had done. The results: guilty on 1 count child abuse 3rd degree, 2 counts child abuse 2nd degree, 2 counts criminal sexual conduct 2nd degree, 1 count criminal sexual conduct 3rd degree, 1 count criminal sexual conduct 1st degree. Sentence 25 to 40 years. The real revenge, though, is not letting him hold me down for the rest of my life. Oh man, going through the comments of this thread is post after post after post of people reliving similar experiences of either having gone through similar abuse or that their daughter is about to testify against their abusers. OP, that was hard to read, but I'm so glad you got justice. And I hope that you're able to find some sort of peace now that this complete waste of human life is gonna spend hopefully the rest of his life behind bars. I hope that people do to Hank what you always hear people do to child abusers in prison. That was r/Prorevenge. And instead of plugging my channel like I normally do, I want to take this moment to remind everyone, if you or anyone else you know is suffering from child abuse, then I highly encourage you to reach out to childhelp.org. And if you or anyone else you know is suffering from sexual abuse, I highly encourage you to reach out to rain.org. That's rain with 2 N's.